unfortunately received a lot of communication from these conspiracy theorists myself. It is complete nonsense.
The UK has reported around 50 fires targeting towers and other 5G equipment.
Burning, 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 burning.
Hello, my name is Julie Snook and welcome to 9 News Watch. More protests against the coronavirus policies are planned in Germany, the USA and other parts of the world this weekend. Germany's foreign minister is warning people to distance themselves from the growing movement, which includes radical extremists, conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxers and anti-Semites, after warnings from the country's intelligence agents. To talk more on this, we're joined by a special guest. He is a professor in digital media research at Queensland University of Technology and an expert on conspiracy theorists. Professor Axel Bruns, thank you so much for your time. Let's get straight into it. We're seeing protests all over the globe demonstrating against government COVID-19 policies, but are these groups actually exploiting the current climate that we're in, this coronavirus pandemic, to gain momentum, to gain more supporters?
There is a certain element of that, most certainly. We're seeing some of these groups that are pre-existing that are now jumping onto the corona bandwagon in order to promote existing conspiracy theories, existing views of the world that they've had before. That might include groups that are against 5G technology, against vaccinations, against China, against Huawei and other companies from China and so on. So many of them are actually exploiting this current worry about coronavirus itself, about what it might do, about where it might be coming from, to push their own pre-existing agendas and just exploit this crisis essentially to make themselves more visible.
I mean, we've even got some linking coronavirus to 5G. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a particularly outlandish theory, I guess, but again, there have been for some time now groups that are very strongly opposed to 5G and the rollout of 5G technology around the world. They've often had concerns about the radiation that 5G masts were giving out and mobile phones were giving out and other related issues. They've been talking for some time about the supposed health risks of 5G. Much of this is entirely unproven and even disproven by medical research.
And what about anti-vaxxers? Because right now health is at the fore, but we've found that anti-vaxxers have been given a platform at the moment.
Yes, it's a similar story here too. There are two elements to this probably. One is that, of course, eventually, hopefully, we will have a coronavirus vaccine, and some of these anti-vaxxer communities that are already opposed to vaccination will no doubt now also be gearing up to oppose vaccination against coronavirus. But also some of the backstories to these anti-vaccination conspiracy groups are that they believe that vaccinations themselves, vaccines themselves, are some part of a global plot to control the population or infect the population with particular pathogens. And they are now also essentially saying that coronavirus itself is an example of this, is an artificially created virus that's been spread either by China or by the US, and that the response to vaccinate people against it then is another example of what they claim to be some sort of world conspiracy to make everyone take particular vaccines and thereby be more easily controllable by some sort of deep state agency.
How dangerous is the misinformation? Because we've got a lot of high-profile names jumping on board. Just for a few examples, here in Australia, the chef Pete Evans, he's thrown some ideas out there. We've got American actor Woody Harrelson. We've got rapper Wiz Khalifa. These are people with huge social media followings. I mean, I think Woody's got about 2 million. This could be dangerous, could it not? As
these stories spread much further beyond these groups and are being spread much further beyond these groups by celebrities and others, essentially acting as a kind of super spreader for misinformation, then suddenly this reaches much larger audiences. And so, yes, you have some Facebook pages and groups that have millions, if not tens of millions of participants. The Wiz Khalifa group has 40 million participants. So if someone in there, and if particularly the object of their attention, the rapper himself in this case, is making claims about links between 5G and coronavirus, of course, suddenly that reaches a much larger audience, an audience that might be more likely to believe it as well, because it comes from someone that they admire and trust to a certain point. And also, of course, they might then act on it. They might share that information with their friends and their connections. So suddenly it reaches new audiences that are much broader and much wider than they've ever been before. And the end result of this is that as we've seen in a number of countries now, we've had people actually attacking 5G masks and the technicians installing those 5G masks. We will presumably have people refusing coronavirus vaccinations when they become available. And that, of course, hurts not just them or the people that they're attacking, but it hurts all of us because it reduces the likelihood that we'll ever have widespread vaccination against the disease and really a full protection net against coronavirus and other viruses.
I know you and your team have been looking into this. So what are some of the theories that you've uncovered? Because there are some absolutely outlandish suggestions out there.
Yeah, in addition to this whole 5G theory that we've talked about already, that somehow 5G is either causing coronavirus or making at least the health effects of coronavirus much worse by weakening the immune system or some such thing. We've also seen a very active trade in conspiracy theories around the idea that the virus is a bioweapon. And interestingly, there are two competing theories here. One is to say that it was engineered in a lab in Wuhan. And of course, this is unfortunately also one of those stories that Donald Trump has very actively spread now, so that China has somehow engineered this virus in order to hurt the rest of the world. But we've also seen the very opposite of that the coronavirus itself was engineered somewhere in the US, possibly, as some of these theories are saying, by some labs associated with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and that it was engineered in order to hurt China and hurt other countries in the world from a US perspective. So we've got very much contradictory theories going around. Of course, there is no evidence for any of this at this point, and it's very unlikely that there's any truth to any of these sorts of stories. Viruses simply happen. But we are now seeing this as something that spreads very, very actively and very widely around the world.
Just lastly, Professor, to those sitting at home watching this, what is your message to people?
I think in the first place, we've all got to be very, very careful as we encounter this sort of information. Part of the reason that the information spreads is because there genuinely is an information vacuum. People are trying to work out what's going on in the world. People are trying to work out how bad this virus is, how badly it will affect them, what they can do against it, and so on. And so we need to protect ourselves against all of this by not sharing on that information, by not looking for information from disreputable sources, by not sharing it on as we're seeing it, by continuing to focus on the official news media, on the main health services as well. They're providing us with official and verified information.
Some sound advice. Professor Axel Bruns from the Queensland University of Technology, thank you so much for your time. We could talk about this all day. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at Australia's COVID headlines now. An 81-year-old woman has become the country's 101st victim, losing her battle with COVID-19 at Sydney's Concord Hospital. Health authorities, however, are not concerned about an outbreak. The ban on cruise ships entering Australian waters has been extended for a further 3 months until September 17. From June 1, New South Wales will allow up to 50 people to dine in pubs and restaurants. Patrons must be seated with no mingling and no standing around. In Queensland, from Monday, there will be no limits on the number of people allowed on public transport. 9 Myer stores opened today, with all 35 stores still closed to follow suit next Wednesday. More than 6 million Australians have now downloaded the COVID Safe app. 1.6 billion jobs have been lost globally, with 81% of the working population in lockdown or partial lockdown, according to the World Food Programme. And US researchers have announced that 9 monkeys given a trial vaccine for COVID-19 are now immune to the virus. Up to 1,300 jobs are to be lost with the closure of 75 Target stores. A further 92 stores will be converted into Kmart's. Parent company Wesfarmers announced today. Now, some employees will be found jobs at Bunnings and Officeworks, but 50 Country Target stores will disappear altogether. Deputy Nationals leader David Littleproud immediately called for a boycott.
Corporate Australia needs to show some social licence. They make a lot of money, they make billions out of Australians, and the reality is they want to turn their back on the most vulnerable. It just goes to show that corporate Australia has lost its way morally, whether it be the supermarkets, whether it be the telcos, but now we've got these types of stores, these general stores doing this sort of stuff to regional Australia. It just goes to show they don't give a rat's about us. And you know what? I think Australians should vote with their wallets and not go near them.
Yeah, look, it's pretty disappointing. Do you agree with him? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining us on 9 News Watch. That wraps up another week. We are back again from Monday at 5:30 p.m. I'm Julie Snook. I will see you next time.